Moving on to this Colts team, man. The Indianapolis Colts are getting a player back, and they got a lot of weird things going on with this team right now. P. You got Anthony Richardson, who is he's healthy, then he's out, then Flacco, and he's getting back, and now we get him back on the field, even though Flacco's playing well. We have Michael Pittman, who was thought to be out for a few weeks, then says he's going to play, then actually plays decent, but still says he might go on IR. So question marks there. Like, obviously a lot of things going on with the Colts, but I think the biggest question mark so far for me has been Jonathan Taylor, a
Hmm.
guy that was performing really well while he was the starter. It looked like the old Jonathan Taylor, and yet another ankle injury for Jonathan Taylor, dealing with the high ankle. He's missed the last 2 weeks, expected to miss this week as well. How are you
Hmm.
treating Jonathan Taylor right now? Because I think he's an elite asset. This high ankle, it tends to linger, and this is an injury that he's had before. There was a thought he could be on the field for week 7. He's going to be out. How are you feeling about Jonathan Taylor right now? Are you buying or selling?
So from the like, if I have Jonathan Taylor, I'm holding, right? If I don't have Jonathan Taylor, I'm actually looking to target him, right? Because people know how long high ankle sprains tend to take, right? Especially for running backs. But the thing about Jonathan Taylor, and the reason why they didn't put him on IR, is because his last leg injury, when he had the surgery, they were saying that surgery had helped that high ankle sprain kind of be a little bit more stable.
Yes.
So it's not as severe as people think, which is why he's not on IR. So he's out this week. I think now is the perfect time to actually buy him because the owner doesn't know what to do, right?
Right.
The owner's going to be afraid. And you just got to talk that talking point of like, this is a high ankle sprain on a running back who already has that leg injured. So I'm definitely buying him. I think he's going to be back to maybe 80, 85% by next week. So, I'm not necessarily concerned or worried about him. If you're the owner, you just got to hold him one more week. I'm pretty confident he's going to come back.
I think there's two scenarios with Jonathan Taylor, unfortunately. And I think one of these scenarios is you are a team that's probably 2-4, 3-3. Maybe you don't feel very good about your team because you took Jonathan Taylor with a high draft capital pick, and you're probably not going to get the same return on him at least for another 2 to 3 weeks. It's just that's the nature of high ankles, and he's out this week especially. So you missed the last 3 weeks with him. You know he has a bye coming up, and I think if I was a team with a losing record, if I was 1-4, 1-5, or 2-4, or I had a losing record, I might consider moving him because I would be expecting him to be an RB1, and I know at least for the next couple of weeks we're probably not going to see a high percentage of those games. So I think selling wise, Jonathan Taylor, if I was a good team, I'd be looking to buy Jonathan
Mhm.
Taylor. I think now, okay, I'm 4-2, I'm 5-1. I can eat a couple bad weeks from Jonathan Taylor and still make the playoffs and still have a stronger team heading into the playoffs. Now I'm more interested in that conversation. So I think it matters which side of the record you are on right now with Jonathan Taylor because these high ankles sometimes they linger and sometimes they get worse. I know you talked about I think it was a tightrope surgery he had. I think
Yeah.
there was they have a surgery where it makes it a little bit. I know I probably butchered that. So if you're an injury doctor watching this, I probably fucked that up. But I know they did something to where you talked about it. It makes the injury less likely to occur. It lessens the impact of it. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm there with you on Taylor, but I would not be looking to buy if I was a losing record right now. I think their situation matters when it comes to Jonathan Taylor.
So if you're a losing team, let's say you're 2-4, right? You have Jonathan Taylor. You mentioned that you're selling him. What exactly are you looking to get? And another point to that question is what at what point do you at what point do you think it's like, damn, I got to make a trade for the immediate, but if I sell my studs, albeit if they're hurt or not, down the stretch, even if I do squeak in, I'm just like, I'm going to be an easy out, right? So when I'm looking at this, the reason I'm asking is because when I'm looking at this and I'm like a 2-4 team, I feel like if I sell my studs, I'm just mailing it in, right? And I'm like maybe trading for depth, in hopes that I can do another trade now. But if I'm going to
The
speak to
thing
that.
is, P. The thing is, this is a really good conversation because I think in trade talks and fantasy, the talk is like never sell your studs, or
Yeah.
if you're gonna trade, make sure to get the best player in the deal, and that doesn't always need to be the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to make moves that help your team out. And at the end of the day, if I can go acquire maybe a stud that's not performing, maybe that's the way I can get a win in the deal when you do trade a stud, right? An upside piece that I got that somebody else got for free, but I know is going to be a rosterable player for me, a starter for me. So when I trade one of my pillars, which I have done before, like I don't mind trading a stud, and I think that's the misconception is everybody's like studs, you can't move them at all. They're going to be better. People wait till the floor is the lowest or when their season is in the gutter in order to make a move. You have to be proactive. When I trade a stud, I make sure I'm getting at least a player that is similar caliber back. And I'm probably taking the L with their most recent performance. So if I trade Taylor and I want to get a running back, I'm thinking I probably can get like a Josh Jacobs and another upside player who I know is a starter for me, right? I can go get a starting receiver, a wide receiver too. Then maybe some a Brandon Ayuk, a George Pickens, somebody in that realm, just off the top of my head. But I can now pair two of those options who I think have upside to help me. And now you don't lose that star appeal. You also keep the star appeal. But what it does now is it gives you a little bit more ceiling. That ceiling that you're worried about losing in the fantasy playoffs, you can gain a little bit of that back. That's what I typically try to do when I trade my studs. I don't know if that's how you move the same way.
Yeah, I think the way that I move is before, like, I'm not opposed to trading my studs at all. The way that I move, and just assuming like nobody's hurt in this conversation, I'm going to be trading up primarily until I get to a point where I feel good about my team. And then I can trade my studs and then get more depth or whatnot, what have you, because I have now, I feel like a solid, more studs to kind of like, to rely on my team. So I have a higher floor. So, before I start trading my studs, I want to acquire maybe one more stud and then another stud can go. You know what I'm saying? Like,
But what if your
if you,
record's 2-4? You don't have that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have that same luxury. And sometimes your back, when you're feeling
yeah,
not maybe not record wise, but when you feel like your back is against the wall, you're like, damn, I don't know if I can go another 2 weeks with this team that I have right now. And Jonathan Taylor, I don't know I could go another 2 weeks and like try to acquire studs. And people aren't really trading. So I may have one trade to get this shit done.
in that scenario, if Jonathan Taylor's out in that scenario, what I'm looking at is probably like two solid, like high floor players, and somebody who is I'm looking to buy low on. You mentioned getting Josh Jacobs and like a Brandon Ayuk or Josh Jacobs and like a Pickens. I don't know anybody who would probably give you like a Josh Jacobs and for somebody who's hurt, right?
For a Taylor?
For a Jonathan Taylor, yeah, like
Shit,
like. I mean,
I would,
but I do think somebody who doesn't have, because Josh Jacobs, they probably spent, a second or a third round on Josh Jacobs, right? But you can probably go and get somebody like a James Conner and a Pickens, right? Somebody who does have like a higher floor and like somebody who has upside,
No,
right?
but
Like
let's be real. If I was like, yo, here's this deal that came in. I'm sending you right now, James Conner and Pickens, and you have Jonathan Taylor, P. There's no way in fucking hell you're accepting that deal.
No, what do you mean? If I'm 2-4 and
You're
I got my,
you are not accepting that deal, P.
Listen to me, bro. If I'm 2-4, this is what I'm gonna do because look, Pickens. I foresee Pickens' value jumping up with Russ there, right? Yeah. From him being just completely ass and forgotten about on the verge of being dropped, he has like wide receiver 3, even like back in wide receiver 2 value, in my opinion, with Russell Wilson there, right? And then I get the Arizona running back who, he has a decent floor. Like James Conner has a decent floor. They do run the rock. I just got to make sure, before they mail it in, I go and grab that rookie over there. That rookie from
Benson,
I
hear you, and it's like but I think we're not talking about like we're not like solely like I don't think we're off. Like I think I said Josh Jacobs, you said James Conner, but like those are the kind of moves you're getting. What I'm not doing is taking like Tyrone Tracy and fucking Romo Dunze for Jonathan Taylor. I'm not doing that. Like I'm not taking Ray Davis and Alan Lazard. Like I'm not taking these one-off players, these guys that 2 fringe guys that we found on waivers to give up my stud player. So if you can find a way to get like some upside on the back end, now we're talking, right? Like that is the way to trade. So I think when it comes to trading studs, a lot of people have this misconception that like, if I trade away my stud, my season is over, and it doesn't have to be. When we get to the fantasy playoffs, that shit doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because anything can happen. I've had great teams great star power in fantasy champions in playoffs and championships and lost. It happens. And sometimes we find gems throughout the year that can help us. So the main thing is if you're a losing team right now, your goal is not championship no more. Your goal is getting to the playoffs where you can make some shit happen. And I think if you're 2-4, 2-4 is not even a really room to panic. 1-5, 0-6, your season's not over. You just need to make changes right now.
Yeah, 100%. And also just, players tend to play hot too. If you find somebody who's like a few years back, Jeff Wilson really won a lot of teams their fantasy championship. That's why
we've seen the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of picking those players up, but yeah, if you're 2-4, if you're 2-4, I mean, I could definitely see myself selling some studs.